The council will now begin the public comment period, which is limited to a maximum of 30 minutes. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Speakers cannot yield or transfer their time to another speaker. Any written comments that have been submitted will be posted and made available for automatic review. Our first speaker this morning is Lisa Bodwin.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mayor Johnson, and the members of City Council. My name is Lisa Bowden, and I am a resident of this great city. Tomorrow marks the day that my father, James Bowden, was murdered with an illegal gun. I was in elementary school when he was killed, and his loss shattered our family. I never want to see another family go through the senseless loss of life from gun violence, and I would like to see better outcomes from the countless calls for gun control, community safety, and new regulations that I've witnessed since my father's death in 1972. As our city moves forward to make budgetary changes and realignment of the workforce, I come before you today to highlight the challenges facing the workforce pipeline and the impact on public safety. Although there are many questions, the process of answering them might bring us to favorable, nonpartisan results. In my research on these issues, I direct you to the National League of Cities, who explore this topic of hard-to-fill public safety workforce challenges and solutions. I have included a link in my email to the council this morning. Of the 3 major cities, only the city of Chicago officers pay out of pocket for their replacement vest, body armor, uniform, and equipment, costing them a significant amount of money out of pocket. Can we get funding for this safety equipment from the Department of Justice and the Homeland Security, FEMA, under the Urban Area Security Initiative, as New York City and LA do? How can we further address protecting those who protect us, improve their mental wellness, and create better outcomes in our communities? How are we addressing the challenge of building the workforce pipeline, overcoming disparities of gender and race, and workplace safety? What would make senior officers stay on the force longer and draw new recruits into public service? And how do we ensure that at the end of the school and work day, everyone makes it home safely? I hope to see our city work together peacefully, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Kathy Powers.
Kathy Powers is not present.
Our next speaker is Peter Cisnoika.
Hi, my name is Pete Cisnica from the 45th Ward. Let's talk about ShotSpotter. Why spend money on a tool that is wrong 90% of the time? Why depend on the CPD to provide ShotSpotter data and then merely declare after the data was released that, quote, a typographical error was discovered in the original query that caused only records up to March 31st, 2023 to return? Why depend on CPD to provide clearly erroneous ShotSpotter data? Is CPD trying to undermine the executive decision to eliminate this flawed tool? From the People's Fabric quote, the key ShotSpotter data that CPD has relied to sell this program have all proven to be false. CPD has credited ShotSpotter with saving the lives of 115 gunshot victims, but found on their lives saved list is cases where no one was shot, cases where people with gunshot wounds walked into police stations on their own looking for help, cases where police were already on the scene and one dead man, all on the lives saved list. In many instances, 911 calls came in before ShotSpotter detections. Life-saving is just a con by the ShotSpotter folks who've changed their story convincingly enough for some gullible aldermen, David Moore, from prevents gun violence to an emotional appeal about its newly and falsely claimed, quote, life-saving benefit. Both Sound Thinking's Ralph Clark and CPD Superintendent Snelling have asserted these false life-saving anecdotes based on no data from Sound Thinking and faulty data from CPD. Here's an anecdote from the CPD data. A dead man on the lives saved list. 11:36 p.m. July 9th, 2023, ShotSpotter detected gunfire in the 9200 block of South Brandon Avenue. Approximately a minute and a half later, a call of shots fired was received for the same block. More than 18 minutes after ShotSpotter's alert, police arrived at the scene and found Denard L. Morris, 45, of East Chicago, Indiana, in the alley. According to the police report, they found Morris covered in blood on his knees with his hands tied behind his back with white duct tape. When asked what happened, Morris said, "Bitch-ass Gary, Indiana police took me and dumped me." Morris died shortly after arriving at the hospital. It's unclear how many other victims on this live-saved list may have been fatally wounded.
Speakers are reminded that people of all ages are listening to public comments, and we ask you to please maintain respect for others and refrain from personal attacks or using profanity. Thank you.
Reclaiming my time. It's unclear how many other victims on this list have been fatally wounded.
Our next speaker this morning is Elaina Gourmet.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning.
My name is Elaina Gormley, and I am a social worker and the co-chair of the Chicago Democratic Socialists of America. Chicago DSA is the largest socialist organization in the metro area, and nationally, DSA is the largest socialist organization in America in more than a century. Chicago DSA were proud to mobilize more than 500 people on a holiday weekend to defend CDSA member and 25th Ward Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez against a cowardly censure attempt for the support of free speech and the right to protest the DNC. Today, the City Council is poised to finalize nominations to the CCPSA in the immediate aftermath of intense weeks of violent state repression of Palestine solidarity protesters, both locally and nationwide. PPD officers ripped off a DePaul student's hijab as the police violently raided campus, and University of Chicago police threw out Jewish student Sederim when the police violently raided their liberated zone. In California, 48,000 workers in UAW 4811 across the University of California system are poised to go on strike because violent police raids repressing free speech are an unfair labor practice. If labor is the arsenal of democracy, then free speech is the ammunition. Socialists and anarchists, not conservatives, liberals, or progressives, are why we have such robust free speech protections in the United States. From the free speech fights of the 1900s, to the Fisher No. 1 strike in Flint, to the Students for Democratic Society chapter at Connecticut State College protesting the Vietnam War, the right to protest, to picket, and to organize on campus and off were fought for and won by socialists. The new CCPSA will be seated as tens of thousands of people prepare to march on the DNC in August to demand an end to the genocide in Gaza. Chicago DSA supports the right to protest within sight and sound of the DNC, and it is the city and the CCPSA's duty to support this demand and use every avenue possible to prevent police violence towards protesters. I greatly appreciate the new commissioner's willingness to step forward at such an intense time. All of the nominees are clearly highly qualified with impressive resumes and numerous credentials that they worked very hard to earn. However, I am skeptical that when push comes to shove and protesters say anything disagreeable, disruptive, crass, rude, or inappropriate that happens at protests, that the CCPSA will be able to do its job and step up to defend protesters against a clearly unprepared, undisciplined, and downright revanchist police department. My one request of the new commissioners and all of City Council is to prove me wrong. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker this morning is Dustin Spence.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Dustin Spence. I'm a member of Socialist Alternative and a member of Workers Strike Back. I'm a resident of the 49th Ward, and I'm here to protest against the city's support for the Democratic National Convention in August. The Israeli state's genocidal war on Gaza is now in its 7th month. Over 35,000 Palestinians and over 1,500 Israelis have been killed. 1 million people in Gaza, nearly half the population, face a man-made famine. None of this would be possible without Biden's political and military support to Netanyahu. This city council has called for a ceasefire, and yet you will be hosting Biden, the world's biggest enabler of this genocide. Both Democrats and Republicans in Congress have approved a stunning $75 million for additional security for the DNC. Security from what? The thousands of working and young people who are angry at Biden's warmongering who want to protest outside the DNC? $75 million for brutal police repression against peaceful protesters, while our cities are starved for housing, for education, and for health care. We demand that the Chicago City Council reverse its decision and approve the demonstration permits so that working and young people from our city, home to the largest Palestinian community in the US, have the right to protest within sight and sound of the DNC. We oppose Biden's support for the war, his attacks on immigrant rights, his refusal to address the cost of living crisis, and his refusal to fight the right wing's attacks on abortion rights, queer rights, and labor rights. Enough is enough. We should support neither Biden nor Trump. Working people need to fight for the largest possible vote for left, independent, anti-war candidates Jill Stein or Cornel West as a step towards a new party for working people. And let's be clear that protests will happen regardless of the permit status. And I urge Mayor Johnson and the members of this council, particularly those who supported the ceasefire resolution, to stand with us and show Joe Biden what we really think of his administration, his party, and his support for this genocidal war. Approve the permits, stop the attacks on the anti-war movement, end U.S. military aid to Netanyahu and the genocidal war on Gaza. We have no faith in Biden or the Democrats and urgently need to build an alternative. And I encourage those in this chamber and all those who agree with me to join us in building the largest demonstrations outside the DNC, to commit to opposing Biden and his warmongering, and to building the anti-war movement through to the November general elections and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Extar Cantave.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. President. Good morning, Mayor Johnson and honorable council members. I am Extar Cantave. I'm here to support the resolution instituting the month of May as Haitian Heritage Month. We thank Alderman Desmond Yancey and the City Council on such an important milestone. This resolution, this honor bestowed on the Haitian community for its contribution to the cultural and economic development of Chicago speaks volume. This comes on the heels of the 2021 vote by the City Council to rename Lakeshore Drive to DuSable Lakeshore Drive in recognition of the accomplishment of Jean-Baptiste Pointe-du-Sable, the Haitian-born founder of the city of Chicago, its first administrator, his first real estate developer, his first business entrepreneur. This milestone is an opener for more things to come. I'm speaking about DuSable Park, which will grace the lakefront of its splendor. And DuSable Park shall be an icon for the world to see in terms of diversity. It will be the locale where diversity triumphs, where equality is recognized and not trampled. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Jackie Brown.
All right, it ain't your turn now. First, giving honor to God, who's the head of my life, I want to thank ex-Alderman House good lady, Dorothy Tillman, for being here. Legendary Dorothy Jean Tillman. And I want to get on this. As far as the city, this should not be a sanctuary city because of the simple fact we have less hot months than we do any days. So why would you not vote for this to be a non-sanctuary city? And then second of all, Alderman Bill, I give you credit. Alderman Lopez, my alderman is not here, which is Emma Mitz. You guys really talked about that money when they gave out the $41 million. We were here that day. Now, Brandon Johnson, you have to answer to the citizens of Chicago because come election time, I would not knock on doors for you or pass out your literature because you have not did a good job as the mayor because you have let us citizens down as citizens. You did not, the teachers are asking for money. Why not give them the money when you gave it to the immigrants? You took away the Section 8 and you gave it to them. Now you want to build every building you want that's down, you want to rebuild it to give them housing when we have over 65,000 homeless people here already in the city of Chicago. So it's not that you can't help your people here, you're not helping them here. And my thing is, you put them in all the impoverished community, but they cannot vote when you remember that. They cannot vote for you. They cannot vote. Give us our 40 acres and our mule because we paid the price for us to be here. They should not come here and get what we already worked for. My thing is, I thought you was the HNIC in this house, but you don't act like it. I'm just gonna put it out there for you because you're not doing right for the people of Chicago. You have let us down. You selling all our buildings for profit. What's gonna happen? They great grandkids gonna have money to come in. They already sold our parking meters. How can we we trust y'all now?
Don't trust them.
You say let us put you back in office. For what? I live in a community in Emma Mitz Ward. We got more auto parts places where an ordinance was put in, and they're still coming in by the dozen, and our whole neighborhood look like a junkyard over there. And we're paying property tax, and then you got to have permits to park on city parking streets where you already paying parking taxes. Who came up with that idea? No, it was put in place before then. But why should that should be abolished? That should be abolished. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Anusanka Gupta.
Good morning. My name is Anushka Gupta, and I'm here with Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago and the Stop ShotSpotter campaign. I urge City Council to reject Order 2024-000-7759. I come from a community that the federal government surveilled and violated after 9/11. The Patriot Act did not make us safe. Instead, it meant that I mourned for my community over and over again. 5 years ago, I had to evacuate a vigil for the Christchurch mosque shootings because someone had a gun. I remember sitting in a library basement and calling my parents, telling them that I loved them because I thought that would be it. ShotSpotter wouldn't have saved us. The only thing that would have prevented that act of violence is to combat Islamophobia and address the root causes. ShotSpotter is just one example of surveillance technology that does not make our communities safer. ShotSpotter argues that gunshot detection alerts save lives when the community fails to alert law enforcement, but a People's Fabric report shows that only 7% of events where CPD claims that ShotSpotter saved a life had no corresponding call. Phone calls provided a more precise location than those ShotSpotter detections. And so I ask, why are we paying for this expensive and inaccurate technology when communities are already doing the work? City Council needs to interrogate Sound Thinking's claims more more fully, and you should be deeply concerned about the findings that show that 93% of the instances where ShotSpotter claims to have saved a life actually had a corresponding 911 call, contrary to what sound thinking asserts. And in at least 3 of the instances where they claim to have saved a life, no one was shot, or the person who was shot had already died. The author of this report, People's Fabric, should be a part of our hearings, not just CPD and sound thinking. And so I shared my story earlier because the police did not help me. Despite being told that many of us were in the library, no one came to let us out or tell us that we were safe. The $9 million that the city spends on ShotSpotter could instead be invested in violence prevention efforts, supportive services, and our education system to actually address the root causes of violence. So I ask again, please vote no on Alder Moore's resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker this morning is Roosevelt Daniel. Our next speaker this morning is Ann Shadell.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Ann Scheidler. I'm a resident of the 39th Ward. I'm here to speak against the proposed amendment to the noise ordinance that would put a quiet zone around the abortion clinic at 659 West Washington Street. I've been a sidewalk counselor in front of Chicago's abortion clinics for nearly 50 years. The number one comment I hear from women heading into a clinic to have an abortion is, quote, "I have no choice." Many of these women are being coerced into, quote, choosing abortion by someone who has some kind of control over them. It is not the choice they really want. In fact, we just learned that a young woman now in her 20s is suing the Chicago public school system because the dean at her high school, the Greater Lawndale School for Social Justice, forced her to have 2 abortions to cover up his crimes of sexually abusing her. The last thing we need is more protection for abortion clinics in our city. You already have a bubble zone ordinance, which we challenged in federal court, and we want a settlement because the law is so vague and was being randomly and unfairly enforced. You also tried this ordinance last fall, and your own attorneys found constitutional issues with it, so you pulled it. You can be sure that our attorneys at the Thomas More Society will sue the city over this ordinance, and we will win, just like we won against the state of Illinois with SB 1909 that tried to shut down the pregnancy centers that give support to women who choose life. The state is now required to pay attorney's fees in that situation. If we trust women to make their own choices, let's make sure they have all the information they need to make life-altering decisions. Don't leave them in the lurch because you want to take away our constitutional right to free speech on a public sidewalk. You don't need a brand new law just to go after some folks whose approach the clinic personnel don't happen to like. Why deprive a young woman of the last opportunity she has to say, no, this is not what I want? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Your Honor, there are no further speakers who have timely signed up for the public comment period.
Thank you. The public comments. I would continue to ask for those who are participating in our democracy. Alderwoman Pat Dow.
Thank you, Mr. President. It gives me great joy and honor this morning on behalf of the members of the City Council to recognize the graduation of Dr. Dorothy Jean Tillman II, who is a Chicagoan. Let's give her a hand, y'all. Who is a Chicagoan and a Third Ward resident. She's the daughter of Gemelita Tillman of the Harold Washington Cultural Center and granddaughter of former Third Ward Alderman Dorothy Tillman, who at the age of 17, Dr. Tillman earned her doctorate degree in integrated behavioral health from Arizona State University, and she walked the stage on May 6, 2024. She is the youngest person ever at Arizona State University to receive a doctorate in integrated behavioral health. She was homeschooled, and at the age of 10, you guys, enrolled in college as a freshman at the College of Lake County, where she majored in psychology and completed her associate's degree in August of 2016. She then went on, if that wasn't enough, to get her Master's of Science from Unity College in Maine in 2020, becoming the youngest environmental and sustainable scientist in the USA, in the country. And now, after graduating with her PhD, Dr. Tillman is the founder and CEO of Dorothy Genius STEAM Leadership Institute, having launched Dorothy Jean STEAM Labs in Chicago and in West Cape Town, South Africa in 2020. She's got numerous honors, awards, and recognitions, which I won't go into today, but I asked you to read today's New York Times, where there's an article about her accomplishments. We stand here today to congratulate you, Dr. Dorothy Jean Tillman II, on your accomplishments and wish you the bright future.
Thank you, Alderwoman. The chair recognizes Alderman Lamont Robinson. Chair recognizes for resolution and acknowledgement Alders Taylor and Byron Sigcho Lopez, Afro-Columbian Recognition Day. And please, with some brevity, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Johnson. Distinguished members of the City Council, I have the distinct honor to introduce a resolution recognizing National Day of Afro-Columbian Recognition Day that took place yesterday, May 21st, that recognizes and remembers 173 years since Colombia abolished slavery. We here in the city of Chicago are proud to make sure that we stand in support and recognizing the diversity of our city, where there's also almost over 20,000 Colombian descent residents. I particularly like to welcome to the chambers some special guests from the Council of Colombia, Angel Colorado, Lina Lara, Gladys Zarate, as well as some community leaders, Eunice Mina, Ana Castillo, Christian Mina, and some new neighbors, as well to the city of Chicago, Francisco Carrillo, Maribel Leon, Carlos Freire, and their family and daughter. This is an important resolution because today, over 10 million Afro-Colombians feel recognized, and at a time where our communities are being pitched against each other, we recognize the strength of our diversity and the values of freedom, liberation, and again, when some people want to take us back to the times of civil wars, we remember our diversity and our inclusion.
Excuse me for a second. Ma'am, if you have an outburst again, I'll have to ask you to be removed. Okay, so I want you to stay though. Please continue. And Alderman, could you wrap it up, please, sir?
Thank you. So, yet again, when we see that importance of our democracy relies on the people, we are proud to present this resolution, and we're so proud Colombia today celebrates to have the first Afro-Colombian vice president in the history of the country. I'm proud to recognize the diversity on our city as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Alder Jeanette Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Too often, we don't ask young people how important their community are to them. And so in the 20th Ward, we ask young people at our elementary schools, what does their community look like to him? And so young people from Dulles Elementary and young people from Sherwood Elementary drew art to show the importance of what their community means to them. Can I have young people and families stand up from Sherwood and Dulles? Mr. President, I would like to thank them, their teacher and their art teachers, for allowing them to do art that will be displayed in my ward office. I want to say that these young people did an incredible job articulating what their community looks like to them. I want to thank the staff and the young people for coming down today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I believe we just have two more. Alderwoman Pat Dow has two more quick acknowledgments that she would like to make.
I'll make them quick, Mr. Mayor. I want to acknowledge a resolution honoring Public Allies Chicago, which is a strong organization and network of young leaders founded in 1993 with 30 Chicago Public Allies under our First Lady, our former First Lady, Michelle Obama. She was the first executive director. And in 1994, President Clinton created AmeriCorps as an outgrowth of the original AmeriCorps national program in 1994. Public Allies is a 10-month full-time work-based learning experience and leadership development program for young adults. And it's a national organization which has prepared over 8,000 diverse young adults for leadership across the nation. With us today, we have with us former Executive Director Mark Payne, if you all would stand. Bianca Cotton, Associate Director of Public Allies, and AJ Owusu. Ariana Smith is the name on their ID, but she's the Director of Pathways and Network Relations at Public Allies. Would you guys stand? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also would like to say I'm a former Executive Director of Public Allies, too. All right. The last resolution I have today, Mr. Mayor, is for Older Americans Month. For all of you who have these blue buttons, this is May, and May is Older Americans Month, a time for us to recognize the diversity of our older Americans and their contributions to and influence on every facet of our society. In the city of Chicago, older Americans, included age 60 years or better, raise your hand, y'all, stands at over 500,000. Older Americans strengthen all of our communities through their service, their civic engagement, and other activities. I want to acknowledge as well our Department of DFSS, our Senior Services Division under the leadership of Margaret LaViere and Commissioner Brandy Kanazi. And they're here with us, Mr. Mayor, in the audience. Can we give our older Americans a hand and a standing ovation? Because we have older Americans in our ward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderwoman. And Vice Mayor Burnett, Alderwoman, Vice Mayor Burnett said he did not get his button. Okay. The chair recognizes, does Alderwoman Stephanie Coleman still wish to offer up her resolution, acknowledgement? Please, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I love all of the diversity and seeing our young people here. I'd also like to recognize the polished pebbles from Earl STEM Academy in West Inglewood. 5th, 6th, and 7th graders are here to join us to be civically engaged for their Shadow Day under the leadership of Principal Regina Lake, again from Earl Academy in West Inglewood in the 16th Ward. Thank you so much to Kelly Fair, the amazing works that she is doing for young women in the city of Chicago and vicinity. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We also, before we have our last acknowledgement, Alder Rodriguez Sanchez, we have students from Horace Mann that are here in the very powerful 8th Ward. Where are the students? Are they up there? All right. They're in the balcony. This is their civics class and their 8th grade social studies teacher, which is, of course, the grade that I taught. So grateful for you all, and thank you for staying awake. All right, and finally, the chair recognized for Mental Health Awareness Month. Chair recognizes finally Alder Rodriguez Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to rise up and remind us all that this is Mental Health Awareness Month. I want to particularly thank all of the community that have been pushing so hard for us to be able to expand our mental health service network, both with mental health crisis response that is compassionate and led by mental health professionals and peer support workers, and also the reopening of our mental health clinics. We know that there have been the Collaborative for Community Wellness have been fighting for over 10 years now to be able to reopen our shuttered mental health clinics, and we are finally making strides to make sure that we can have mental health care for everybody that needs it. So I am deeply grateful for the work of the Collaborative. I am also very grateful for the mayor's team. We have been working on the Treatment Not Trauma report for expansion of mental health care for the last few weeks. And they have been working around the clock. So my deepest appreciation for everybody that has been trying to make this dream possible. We really want to make sure to take care of everybody who needs mental health services. We know how deeply needed this is in our communities for all kinds of reasons, for public health reasons, for public safety reasons, and we're finally going to be able to present recommendations for implementation. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you to your team. Thank you, the Collaborative for Community Wellness. We are going to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. So finally, Alderman Lamont Robinson does wish to have his acknowledgement. The chair recognizes Alderman Lamont Robinson. With some brevity too, please, sir.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Good morning to my colleagues. Today I have the honor of recognizing an extraordinary individual whose dedication and compassion have profoundly impacted our city, who has been an employee of the city of Chicago for 25 years. If Inspector Kevin Callahan can please stand up. Inspector? Great. I first met Inspector Kevin Callahan at the scene of a high-rise building fire in October. From 7 a.m. when that fire started through the next 14 hours, Inspector Callahan stayed with my staff, ensuring the 22 displaced families were housed, fed, and supported. His commitment to these families didn't stop when the fire was out. Alongside of him that night was our very own Commissioner Marlene Hopkins, who arrived that night at 9 p.m. to assist in the relief efforts. Her dedication exemplifies, Mr. Mayor, the spirit of public service, and together they demonstrated what it means to go above and beyond for the call of duty for our constituents. Kevin, I see my father and you, who was also a Chicago building inspector for 20 years. It's folks like you that our city has to acknowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Callahan has served as a building inspector for 25 years. During his career, he has aided countless Chicagoans, ensuring that their homes are safe and livable, and has acted as an advocate for vulnerable and unhoused populations, often utilizing his own money to provide shelter for those in need. Throughout his time as a building inspector, he has helped single moms and low-income families, again, out of his own pocket, covering hotel stays, furnishings, rental deposits, groceries, and even helping move personal items. His actions demonstrate an extraordinary level of personal commitment and compassion, and embodies exactly what it means to be a true public servant. Inspector Callahan has not only positively affected the residents of our city, he has also made a significant impression among his colleagues, providing guidance and mentorship to junior members within his department. He is a true unsung hero, working quietly and tirelessly to ensure the safety and the well-being of our community. Today, we celebrate and honor Inspector Kevin Callahan. Not just for his years of dedicated service, but his unwavering commitment to the people of Chicago. His legacy of kindness and advocacy for those in need serves as an inspiration to all. Thank you, Inspector Callahan, for your remarkable contributions, for being a beacon of hope and support in our community. Your work has made Chicago a better place for the countless families, and for that, we are eternally grateful. If we can please stand and recognize Inspector Kevin Callahan.
All right, thank you again, all those alders, for the acknowledgement. Now we have 3 resolutions today celebrating Jewish American Heritage Month, Haitian American Heritage Month, and Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Alderwoman Harris for the suspension of the rules.
I move for the temporary suspension of the rules for immediate consideration of these resolutions, Mr.
Hearing no
President.
objections, so ordered. So in order to, in the interest of respecting time today, we will forego the reading of the resolutions and go straight to comments from city council members. Our first resolution is celebrating Jewish American Heritage Month. Are any members? The chair recognizes Alderwoman Deborah Silverstein.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of this resolution. As alderman of the 50th Ward, which has the largest Jewish community in the city of Chicago, and as the only Jewish member of the Chicago City Council, it is my honor to recognize Jewish American Heritage Month. We are joined here today by representatives of the American Jewish Committee, the Jewish United Fund of Chicago, and the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center. We also have the distinct privilege of being joined by Lynn Nowitzki. She traveled all the way from Wheeling to be with us today. She's a Holocaust survivor who would like to share her story and help us understand the vital need for standing up to hate and remembering the lessons of the Holocaust. Lynn is going to speak with us in just a few moments. I want to thank her so much for being here and for helping keep the memory of the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust alive. Before we hear from Lynn, I just want to say a few words about Jewish American Heritage Month. The first Jewish residents of America settled in 1654 in New Amsterdam, which is now called New York. After fleeing anti-Semitism and persecution in Portuguese-controlled Brazil. Starting with a community of just 23 people, the Jewish population of America skyrocketed to the millions, second only to Israel. Currently, our nation houses nearly 40% of the world's Jews.
It is my long desire to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. Public comments are now over. Please refrain from shouting from the gallery. If you cannot adhere to that, I would have to ask that you be removed. Please continue, Alderwoman Silverstein.
With more than 300,000 Jewish men, women, and children, Chicago is the 5th largest Jewish community in the world. From the arts to sciences, business to philanthropy, the Jewish Americans have played an integral role in shaping the fabric of our society, nation, and city. We are doctors and lawyers, teachers and nurses, fathers and mothers, neighbors and friends. The one commonality between us all is not our religion, but our national identity. We are all Americans, and we all share a dedication to freedom, to justice, and to the values that make this nation great. We are as diverse as this nation and committed to the health, stability, and strength of the United States. Despite our contributions to society, however, anti-Semitism still remains a very real threat to the local Jewish community. Anti-Jewish hate is at its all-time high in Chicago and across the nation. Just 1 week ago, in my community, anti-Semitic flyers were left on car windshields on a predominantly Jewish block. The flyers were hateful, vile, and completely unacceptable. They parroted the same disgusting rhetoric that has fueled pogroms, inquisitions, and attacks against Jews throughout the ages. Jewish residents are scared, and we don't know if we can trust our elected officials to protect us from those who wish to harm. That is why I invited Lynn and the Holocaust Museum here today, why it is so important for us to hear her story. It is also why I had the Holocaust Museum here at City Hall on Monday. They screened their award-winning virtual reality program for our city leadership. I would like to thank you, Mayor, the City Treasurer, Melissa Conyers-Irvin, and the many aldermen who came to hear the survivors' stories. Jewish Americans have been in this country before our nation was formed. They gave us the polio vaccine and helped split the atom. Jews marched with Dr. King and have been on the forefront of every social justice movement. Jewish history and culture cannot be separated from the American experience. They are inextricably linked to our nation's rich tapestry. I call upon my fellow City Council members, community leaders, and every Chicagoan to join us in this critical fight against anti-Semitism. Let us be proactive activists for change, inspiring others to stand against hate and intolerance. Together, we can build a nation where every person, regardless of their religious or ethnic background, can thrive and flourish. Thank you all, and may we all have a very happy Jewish American Heritage Month. And at this time, I would like to ask Lynn Nowitzki to say a few words.
Alderwoman Silverstein, just a moment, please. I would ask for this body to offer privilege to the floor. Are there any objections? Hearing none, it is ordered. Please, you may commence.
My name is Gdalina Lynn Nowitzki, and I'm a Holocaust survivor. As a child, my world and that of my family forever changed on June 22nd, 1941, when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union and bombed my home of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. A few months between September 29 and 30, 1941, SS and German special units, under the guidance of mobile killing squads, murdered 33,771 Jews of Kyiv at a ravine called Babin Yar, just outside the city. Over 48 hours, my neighbors and my community and my own family, my grandmother Fania, were brutally murdered Individual human beings, men, women, children, and the elderly brought to a ravine. ID cards taken, forced to undress, and then shot. It was one of the first and largest mass killing at a single location during World War II. My father has left for the front, so my mother and I traveled by cattle car to the interior of Soviet Union. There were so many people in the car. Some people cannot have a space to sit, no food or water at all. Of course, our train went without any schedules. Germans bombed it, and then some cars were on fire. Human bodies were scattered all over. During airstrikes, people like my mom and I were running in nearby bushes, if any, and waited until it was over. We lived in such terrible conditions. We lived in a room with different families, sometimes 4 families in one room together, without running water and bathroom. We eventually made to Kazakhstan and able to survive the rest of the war and Holocaust. After the war was over, we made it back to Kyiv. But the years after the war were marked with anti-Semitism. I'm sure Jewish people experienced anti-Semitism from individuals, groups of people, but the government's inspired anti-Semitism is something different, much worse. We were branded people, lower class of people. We suffered during the war. So many of us were killed by bullets, killed in extermination camps, tortured, and even after all of that, we again became a lower class with fewer rights and fewer opportunities. In a couple years, we decided that we have enough of anti-Semitism and left our country of origin for America. It was in 1979. Our family left the Soviet Union as political refugees, unable to have equal rights with other citizens who couldn't practice their religion. It wasn't easy to establish ourselves in a new country, to balance Russian and American way of life, but we managed. We survived. So that briefly is my story as a Holocaust survivor. So you might ask me why I'm telling you this story. I feel strongly that I have a moral obligation to 6 million Jews, my grandma Fania and other relatives included, to tell people our story in order not to forget Holocaust. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, says the proverb 31:8. They perished, were exterminated, but not to be forgotten. May we remember their lives so they will not suffer double death. We have to remember them. Our memory of their courage and bravery are their tombs and monuments. That is why I speak, why I share my story, and why I believe that the work of institutions like our own Illinois Holocaust Museum is so important, as their mission reminds us, remember the past, transform the future. I hope you will live today and remember the past, and what happens when hatred and bigotry and anti-Semitism are left unchallenged, and the entire world remains silent. But I also hope you live today understanding that for this generation and for the future generations, we must work for a better world. Thank you.
Thank you.